I'm Danny Horn, and this is a love story.
What now, my love? Now that you left me, how can I live through another day?
I was 5 years old when The Muppet Show started. I lived outside New York, and the first show they aired on the New York station was the Rita Moreno episode. I was aging out of the core Sesame Street demographic, so I was really excited that the Muppets had a new show for grown-ups. I watched that first episode of The Muppet Show, and afterwards I was so pumped up by how great it was. I remember sitting in my chair and spinning around and around and thinking, I am going to love this for the rest of my life. As you know, plans that you make when you're 5 years old aren't usually that durable long-term, but this one held up. When I got out of college, I published a fanzine called Muppet Zine, and then I started a Muppet fan site called Tough Pigs, and in 2005, I co-founded the Muppet Wiki. And here I am, as predicted, still loving the Muppets just as much as I ever did. Now, Miss Piggy is all over that Rita Moreno episode. She's in the background in the opening number, she's in Veterinarian's Hospital and at the dance, she's in the panel discussion. Piggy's in the opening theme and the closing curtain call. She is everywhere in that episode. But Miss Piggy isn't the star. The star of that episode is clearly Animal, the drummer. In the closing number, Rita Moreno's trying to sing Fever and Animal's drumming too loud and interrupting her while she's singing. It's a really funny sketch. So at 5 years old, I decided right away that my favorite Muppet character was Animal. It wasn't Miss Piggy. Why would it be? Miss Piggy wasn't anybody's favorite character. Not yet.
I can't give you anything but love, baby. That's the only thing I've plenty of, baby.
Kissy kissy, and welcome to the first episode of the Fantastic Miss Piggy Podcast. I'm Danny Horn, and this podcast chronicles my journey to learn everything there is to know about that divine swine, the incomparable Miss Piggy. You might ask, why would somebody make a podcast about just one Muppet? And the answer is because Miss Piggy would demand one. And that is actually the point. Miss Piggy, as a fictional character, makes demands on the world, and for the most part, the world eagerly responded to those requests, creating a superstar because a make-believe pig willed herself into existence. So it actually seems a little late in the day to have a podcast devoted to this amazing character. Now, the main thing about Miss Piggy is that she feels things very deeply, and she expresses her feelings very passionately. Whether it's Kermit or her career or her wardrobe or a midnight snack, she is in it all the way. So this podcast is about loving something so much that it needs to be expressed in the biggest possible way. Where Miss Piggy's concerned, too far is actually the appropriate amount of far. Usually on the show, I'll have guests to talk to, like a podcast. You've heard podcasts before. But for this first episode, I want to tell you about her original name, Miss Piggy Lee, which it's possible she never actually had. It's 1974, and Jim Henson is trying to sell a television pilot called The Muppet Show Sex and Violence. They're planning to do a science fiction spoof on the show called Return to Beneath the Planet of the Pigs, so they need some pigs. Bonnie Erickson is a designer and puppet builder who was working for the Muppets, and for these pig puppets, she was trying out a new technique. Before this, the Muppets had been made from patterns on foam that were put together and covered with fleece, but for these pigs, Erickson carved the puppets directly out of a block of foam. They needed several pigs for the Sex and Violence pilot. The king of the pigs would be a big, ugly warthog, and they needed a scientist pig who would eventually evolve into Dr. Julius Strangepork. There was kind of a basic background pig, and then there was the female pig. And there, like Aphrodite, Miss Piggy emerged from the foam, a love goddess, waiting for her cue. Now, there are two kinds of Muppet pigs. Most of them have these little black dot eyes that don't give them a lot of personality, but some of the pigs have Muppet eyes, including an iris and a pupil and eyelids. Those are the pigs that become featured characters, like Link Hogthrob and Annie Sue. The female pig that Bonnie Erickson carved for Planet of the Pigs got those little black beady eyes, so she was clearly intended to be nothing special. But then she got her big break on The Tonight Show. It's May 24th, 1974. Jim Henson is booked to appear on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. The bulk of the appearance is Henson sitting on the couch with Kermit talking to Carson, but they also do a Muppet sketch at the beginning before Henson sits down. It's an old sketch from the first Jim Henson show, Sam and Friends, and it's called That Old Black Magic.
Oh, black magic has you in its story.
Oh, black magic that you weave so well.
Those icy fingers up and down my spine.
The same old witchcraft when your eyes meet mine.
This bit is familiar to anyone who's even heard of Sam and Friends. It's one of the surviving clips that they always play in documentaries as an example of what the show was like. It's a male puppet and a female puppet lip-syncing to Louis Prima and Keely Smith's 1958 hit, That Old Black Magic. They're just kind of dancing around and acting funny. In the original sketch, the guy is Sam, the title character from Sam and Friends, and the female character is Kermit wearing a wig, who they called Kermina. It was a popular bit on Sam and Friends, and Henson wanted to do it on The Tonight Show, but they couldn't bring Sam and Kermina. By 1974, the old Sam puppet wasn't usable, and Kermit wasn't doing drag acts anymore. So they needed a male puppet and a female puppet, and the ones that were around were these pigs that Bonnie Erickson had built for Sex and Violence. So they took the warthog and the girl pig that would become Miss Piggy. Now, you don't go singing for late night legends in your Return to Beneath the Planet of the Pigs costumes, so they gave the warthog a brown velvet suit and did a complete makeover for the female puppet. She was supposed to be a glamorous gal singer, and she couldn't do that with those beady little dot eyes. So at the Muppet Workshop, Bonnie Erickson went to the eyes drawer, and she selected 2 blue eyes with big lashes and purple eyelids, and she replaced the pig's little black eyes. Erickson dressed the pig in a silver satin dress cut low in the front, and to disguise the place where the neck of the puppet was exposed, she tied on a vivid blue scarf, which was also attached to the pig's left hand. Then she gave the puppet long evening gloves in the same silver satin. So they dressed her up, and they sent her out on stage to dazzle the late-night Johnny Carson audience.
I should stay away, but what can I do? I hear your name and I'm aflame.
Flame! Flame in the fire!
That only your kiss.
Put out the fire!
It gets some laughs, but to be honest, this sketch is not great for 1974. The bit is 16 years old, and it plays differently on the Tonight Show stage. The original Old Black Magic sketch with Sam and Kermina was amazing because the comedy of it is that the characters are crammed into the dimensions of a 1950s television screen. Sam's dance is bursting with energy. He's jitterbugging around the back of the set and then bolting forward when he's got a line. And meanwhile, Kermina is very still and composed, as a comic contrast to Sam. There isn't a joke in the sketch, it's just 2 characters lip-syncing to a familiar recording. The thing that's funny is that they're filling up the entire space on the screen with this wild energy. That's not happening in the Tonight Show version. The 2 pigs are standing on stage in front of a sparkly gold curtain, and it's a wide shot. So the puppets are just taking up the bottom half of the screen, and frankly, it doesn't look that great. They are trying, though. Henson's warthog is bouncing around like crazy, and Frank Oz, playing the girl pig, he's introducing a little storyline into the bit. Instead of just standing there singing like Kermina did in the original, the pig is trying to put across a performance. When she's got a line, she looks off to stage right and she puts her heart into it. And then she gets a little shock when Hamilton bursts in with his explosive interruptions. She doesn't get mad at him, it's not that strong of a storyline, but she does a couple takes to the audience that are like a little shrug. There's also some choreography around the lines, in a spin, pow, loving that spin I'm in, pow. And that's about all the plussing they're able to do with this sketch. When the sketch is over, Henson grabs Kermit and he walks over and sits down on Carson's couch, still out of breath from his performance. Now, Carson's got an eye for talent, and he is curious about these pigs.
What are the pigs?
That wears me out.
I can imagine.
I think I work harder than Louis Prima.
What are the pigs' names? Do you have names for the pigs?
That was Piggy Lee.
Huh? Piggy Lee? Piggy Lee?
The other one is just Hamilton Pig.
Just Hamilton Pig. And you got your friend Kermit here with you tonight, huh?
Yes, I brought whole Kermit out.
Kermit, I love Kermit.
Carson moves on, he talks to Kermit for a while, but that was it. The crucial moment that determines the fate of this puppet. If they'd gone with a different sketch on Carson that night, if they hadn't specifically needed a glamorous girl singer at that particular moment, that puppet would have just been the female pig from the Beneath the Planet of the Pigs sketch. Just part of the crowd of pigs and frogs and chickens that populated the Muppet troupe here on the cusp of the Muppet Show. But they needed a singer, and the pun was just sitting right there. Piggy Lee.
You let other women
been a minute since Peggy Lee has been at the forefront of the American public consciousness, so you might not be familiar with the name. Peggy Lee was a beloved jazz and pop singer starting in the 1940s. Her first major hit in 1943 was Why Don't You Do Right, which, I'm sorry to do this, I'd love to be more classy than this, which was the song Jessica Rabbit sings in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So yeah, you've heard a Peggy Lee song. She recorded her first album, Rendezvous with Peggy Lee, in 1948, and Billboard named her the nation's #1 vocalist. By 1949, she was being introduced on radio as Miss Peggy Lee, as a sign of respect. If you need another cartoon in order to place her, in 1955 she co-wrote the songs for Lady and the Tramp. She plays Peg, the Pekingese that Lady meets at the pound, and she sings He's a Tramp. In 1958, Peggy Lee recorded her signature song, which was Fever, but with a better behaved drummer. Her career lasted for decades, and in 1969, she reached #1 on the Billboard Adult Contemporary chart for the song Is That All There Is? And she won a Grammy for it, so by 1974, she was still very much in the public eye. Back to 1974 and the Muppets, it is 5 months later. They haven't shot the Sex and Violence pilot yet, but they need that pig again for another variety show appearance. This time it's a TV special for Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. Herb Alpert is a famous trumpet player, which is not really a job description that people have anymore. His first big hit was The Lonely Bull in 1962, which hit #6 on the singles chart. In 1966, he had the #1 album, which was called Whipped Cream and Other Delights. And that same year, he also had the #3 album and the #5 album. In 1967, there was an animated film built around a Herb Alpert song, and it won an Academy Award. You would not believe how famous a trumpet player could become in the 1960s. Alpert took some time off in 1969. He took a 4-year break from music, so this television special in 1974 was part of his comeback. Now, if you're going to go on television and all you're going to do is play the trumpet, you need some kind of visual hook to give people something to look at. So they brought in the Muppets for a guest appearance. The special has a number of Muppet sketches. They do the Smurfs dancing to In a Little Spanish Town, and they've got the Boss Men dancing to Spanish Flea. And then there's this.
There are certain moments in music that definitely need a woman's touch.
It's about time, and I got just the one you've been looking for. Herbie, I'm Hoagie Morris. Here's my card. Talent agent, here's my card, Herbie. I'm talent agent extraordinary. I'm with you 100%. Less 10% for me, naturally. Listen, I got just the chick you've been looking for, Herbie. I mean, she's got great pipes. She's got a sweet personality. She's got a zoptic figure. She's a pretty foxy-looking young lady. You know what I mean, Herbie, huh? Piggy, come on in here, Piggy.
Hoggy Marsh is played by Jim Henson. He's the same warthog puppet that played Hamilton Pig on The Tonight Show, and he brings Piggy out on stage. She's the same pig puppet with the satin dress and gloves and the blue scarf attached to her hand. She's got pearls now for this appearance, which she didn't have on The Tonight Show. She looks weird in this appearance because her eyes are really close together. They're practically touching each other, which makes her look younger and a bit cross-eyed. But you don't actually see her face full on very much because she spends most of the next 2 minutes turned away from the audience and just rubbing herself on a very famous trumpet player.
Herbie, I'd like you to meet Piggy. Piggy doll, this is Herbie, baby. This is your letter to success, Piggy doll. I've been telling him all about you.
Hello, Mr. Alpert.
Beautiful, beautiful. She doesn't just say hello, she oozes it out, huh? Isn't that something?
Excuse me.
As you can hear, mostly this sketch is Jim Henson doing this funny talent agent bit. Jerry Nelson is playing Piggy, and this is her big moment.
Piggy, hey Piggy, you got your bit worked out with the band back here? Okay. Go ahead.
This is for you, Herbie. Hit it, boys. I can't give you anything but love.
Don't give it all away. They got the message, and besides that, I think we got a deal.
Now, the most interesting thing about Piggy in this sketch is she can't keep herself off Herb. As soon as she comes on stage, she snuggles up to him, nuzzling against him and rubbing on his chest. She keeps this up for a full minute and a half, with just that 5-second intermission when she's singing. She hardly looks in our direction at all the entire sketch. And this is something that Piggy does and will always do. She stretches the boundaries of acceptable social behavior, and she creates new forms of personal expression that make the world more interesting. This is related to camp, and I'm going to have a lot more to say about that later on. I'm just going to put a pin in this for now, but we will be coming back to this later on in the podcast. What I can tell you right now is that Piggy sexually harasses Herb Alpert on television for 90 seconds, and then she submits her list of demands.
Herbie, here's my terms, Herbie. Now dig this. She gets top dollar. Now she gets an equal percentage. She's get equal sharing billing with the group, you know. She gets a round trip first class transportation for two. She gets a 2-bedroom suite, and she's get her own hairdresser and the right to select her own songs. Now you just have to sign this thing at the bottom. Herbie, baby, you know how to pick talent. Come on, Piggy doll, let's get out of here.
He's cute.
And then it's time to shoot the sex and violence pilot. Piggy loses the beautiful blue eyes and the satin dress. They put the beady little black eyes back on, and she goes back to being a background pig like she was originally supposed to be. They shot Sex and Violence in December 1974, and they aired it on ABC in March 1975. The pilot takes place more or less in a television studio, and this sketch is the most direct television spoof that they do.
Welcome to Films in Focus. And now for this week's film. Colossal Pictures has just released Return to Beneath the Planet of the Pigs.
This is a Muppet film reviewer who looks like Gene Shalit sitting behind a desk, introducing clips from a science fiction movie.
The hero is an astronaut who visits a strange planet and finds himself in a curious situation.
I hope they bring some pickle relish.
Like some
Human,
ketchup.
human, eat.
I can't eat this junk. I'm a scientist from Earth.
Listen, it's speaking piggish.
You're right. Let's take him to the great Dr. Naga.
Dr. Naga?
Dr. Naga.
He's brilliant. He'll drill a hole in the top of your head so we can look inside.
That's Fran Brill performing the female pig in this sketch because for one night and one night only, they treat Piggy like she's a female character rather than a drag performance, which is what she actually is. The female puppet's also used in another clip later on where she's the queen of the planet.
We'll have the old fish heads, the black banana peel, and the cold-boiled coffee with a cigarette butt floating in it.
Very good, madame. Oink, oink. As we pigs say.
And that's it. It's not very impactful. When people say that Sex and Violence was Piggy's first appearance, this is not the version of Piggy that endures. But the name, I told you I'd get to the name. It is 1976. The Sex and Violence pilot didn't get picked up by ABC, but Lou Grade agreed to finance The Muppet Show, and Henson and his troupe start filming in 1976. The new show is set in a vaudeville theater, so they need a cast of stage performers, and one of the characters they have now is that girl singer who can't sing, Piggy Lee. So they put the big blue eyes and the satin dress back on the female pig. She walks right on set, no questions asked. At some point, they decide that they shouldn't call her Piggy Lee anymore because it's kind of a mean joke insulting a legendary performer. Also, that's just not the kind of humor that they're doing, kind of a Mad Magazine celebrity spoof. Nobody else in the cast has a name like that. So they're going to drop Lee from the name and just keep Piggy. The interesting thing for me is it's hard to say exactly when that happens. She's definitely still Piggy Lee in 1976, and I'll tell you how I know that. I've got an LA Times article from March 1976 when there was a presentation for the National Association of Television Program Executives in San Francisco. This is a yearly conference where the TV folks get together and people pitch their syndicated series directly to program executives to put on the air. In the LA Times, they reported on the 1976 presentation, and they say, another ITC hotcake was a new primetime access show featuring Jim Henson's Muppets, already into 74 markets and starring new Henson creations like singer Piggy Lee, as well as the familiar Gargoyles. And all the pre-publicity mentions that name as well. In August 1976, there's a wire service article called New Pals Join Muppets for Fall Season, which says Kermit's cronies will include Piggy Lee, a voluble songstress who's crazy about Kermit. In September 1976, Tampa Bay Times, this format calls for some new characters like songstress Piggy Lee. And in the Indiana Gazette, among the various theatrical types who will entertain you on the series, Piggy Lee, a torch singer who carries a torch for Kermit. So that name, Piggy Lee, is out there as the first season of The Muppet Show begins, but they only use it on the show once. In the earliest Muppet Show episodes, Kermit just calls her Piggy, like here in episode 101.
Piggy, honey? You can take this solo.
Yes, my love.
Here we go.
I know.
And in episode 104.
Oh, light of my life, frog of my arms, at last we are alone.
At last you are alone, Piggy. I'm about to go on stage in front of 1,000 people.
The name Piggy Lee does appear in the scripts for these episodes. For example, here in episode 104, this is the scene where Piggy delivers her first karate chop. The backstage plot for this episode is that Scooter has a robot TV show host that looks just like Kermit with a big wind-up key in his back. And in this scene, the mischievous robot whispers sweet nothings in Piggy's ear, which she does not appreciate. And when Kermit walks into the room, well, in the script it says Piggy Lee decks Kermit with a single blow. He falls out of frame. Famously, in rehearsal, Frank Oz turned that punch into a karate chop.
Piggy, let me explain.
Oh? Explain this.
And doing it as a karate chop instead of a punch was so funny that Frank Oz knew there was something special here. Everyone agrees that this is the pivotal moment that made Miss Piggy into a real character that they were interested in developing, but she wasn't Miss Piggy yet. The script is still calling her Piggy Lee. The first time she's called Miss Piggy on the show, it's a guest star who does it, and it's a very complicated moment because Jim Neighbors says Miss Piggy, and Kermit immediately says Piggy Lee. This is episode 106.
I'm sort of an old country boy, and I feel right at home with all these chickens and roosters and pigs. Right. Especially that Miss Piggy. I just love her.
Oh, Piggy Lee.
You called my love.
Hey, Miss Piggy.
So that is both the first time anyone says Miss Piggy on The Muppet Show and the only time anyone says Piggy Lee. So that's where the handoff takes place. At this point in the sketch, Piggy rushes in and kind of throws herself at James because now she's in love with him. And by the end of the sketch, Kermit's gone and Piggy is swooning over another celebrity.
Well, he doesn't appreciate classical music, James. But it drives me bananas. Oh, sing again.
Now, because we've got both names in play at the same time here, naturally it would be helpful to know what they call her in the script for this sketch. But in the script that I've seen, Miss Piggy isn't actually in this scene at all. In the shooting script for episode 106, the Talk Spot sketch is just Jim Neighbors talking to Kermit about having a pet frog when he was a kid. The joke is that Kermit's offended by the idea of owning a pet frog, especially when the conversation turns to biology class. So it's just back and forth between Jim Neighbors and Kermit. One possibility is that the folks working on The Muppet Show liked the karate chop in episode 104 so much that they decided they wanted to do more with this character, so they rewrote the talk spot in 106 to spotlight Piggy some more. But Kermit still calls her Piggy a lot. It actually takes several episodes before you hear them use Miss Piggy as her name. She's still called Piggy Lee in the script for episode 107, and it's in the script for episode 108, the Paul Williams episode, that we see the name Miss Piggy used in a stage direction for the first time, but they don't say it out loud yet. In episode 109, Charles Aznavour calls her Mademoiselle Piggy.
I don't follow.
I will show you. Piggy, Mademoiselle Piggy, would you come here, please? She doesn't speak French, I suppose.
No, she doesn't speak a word of French.
Good.
And then in episode 112, the Peter Ustinov episode, Kermit the Frog finally says Miss Piggy out loud for the first time.
Tonight's panel includes our own Miss Piggy.
Kissy, kissy!
And by episode 116, they really want to make sure we know that's her name.
Oh, dear nephew of the theater owner.
Well, yes, Miss Piggy?
Would you do Miss Piggy a favor?
There's one more weird example of this handoff, which is the 1977 Muppet Show Annual from the UK, which has some comics pages that refer to her as both Miss Piggy and Piggy Lee. Now, the curious thing is, I haven't yet found an example of someone calling her Miss Piggy Lee. In the scripts, it just goes straight from Piggy Lee to Miss Piggy. But this connection to Peggy Lee helps explain what the name Miss Piggy actually means. Because sometimes people ask, what's her full name? And the answer is, it's Miss Piggy. So is Miss her first name and Piggy her last name? Like, no, obviously not. And there's also the question of why is it Miss Piggy rather than Ms. Piggy? Or if she marries Kermit, would she be Mrs. Piggy? And again, not the case. Because they didn't call the singer Miss Peggy Lee because they wanted to make sure everyone knew she wasn't married. She was. Peggy Lee was married 4 times. They called her Miss Peggy Lee as a sign of respect. It's a title, an expression of status, like Duke Ellington and Count Basie. When you're really good and everyone holds you in high esteem, they give you an honorific, Miss Peggy Lee. And that's what Miss Piggy stole from Peggy Lee when she wasn't looking. She didn't take the name, she swiped the title, and she never gave it back. So that's the end of my story for today, and that is the amazing and complicated character that we will be talking about on this podcast, and we are just getting started. In the next episode, I'll be talking with Anthony Strand from the Muppet Movie Podcast Moving Right Along about Miss Piggy's development in the first season of The Muppet Show. So, kissy kissy, and thank you so much for listening to this first episode of the Fantastic Miss Piggy Podcast, brought to you by my friends at toughpigs.com. If you have comments or questions, or you know stuff about Miss Piggy that you'd like to share, you can write to me at fantasticmisspiggy@gmail.com. That's fantasticmisspiggy@gmail. I'm also on X as Fantastic Miss P and on Blue Sky as Danny Horn. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next time.
Gee, I'd like to see you looking swell, baby. Diamond bracelets Woolworth doesn't sell. Baby, till that lucky day, you know darn well, baby, I can't give you anything but love.